Good afternoon. We are here this afternoon for the forum sponsored by the Hibbing Chamber of Commerce. District 7A for the state legislative race in November, only a couple weeks away. We have with us Aaron Schneiser and Spencer Igo. So each one of you has 2 minutes to do an introduction if you would. So Aaron, we'll let you start first.
Okay. My name is Aaron Schnauzer. I am a teacher at Greenway. I teach science. I've taught there for 10 years now. I've taught for 13 years. My husband and I live in Balsam Township, and we've enjoyed living up here for the last 10 years or so. I'm running because I want to make sure everyone feels represented and not just political ideologies, and I want to bring it into finger pointing and blame gaming and making sure we are working cooperatively to make sure we get the services we need in our local communities. I'm a firm supporter of mining. I think it built our economy. It's going to continue to do so. I think it's a key component in switching to green economy and providing lots of union jobs. As a teacher, I value education. I support fully funding education and making sure our local schools get the funding we need, which hasn't been happening for the last couple of years. Just making sure we listen and cooperate with each other, making sure voices are heard and everyone feels like they have a voice in our government, especially marginalized communities that feel like they don't have.
Thank you. And Spencer?
Yeah, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Spencer Igo. I have the pleasure to serve as the state representative right now for House District 7A, and I've had the privilege to be serving this area since 2020. I live just north of Grand Rapids in Wabana Township, and I'm a small business owner outside the legislature. So since entering the legislature, I've had the opportunity to kind of rise to some leadership roles. Those leadership roles, I currently serve as chair of the IRRB advisory board, which has been an absolute privilege to work with our communities, tackle economic development goals so we can keep diversifying our economy up here, while also supporting our mining industry. Also have had the opportunity to serve as an assistant minority leader for the House Republican Caucus, which I've been using as a way to not only advocate for our district and our region, but to continue to build partnerships. And that's something I'm going to talk a lot about tonight, is we live in what I like to call an era of partnerships. And especially up here in the range, it's by working together and creating these partnerships of communities, cultures, that if we can find ways to continue to partner, which is what we've been doing, we're going to see our goals come to reality. You know, some of those things, one of the bills I'll just talk about right now that I recently passed was funding to work on finishing Highway 169. And right now we're working on building a coalition that's bringing communities all the way from Cohasset in Itasca County, all the way to Virginia here in St. Louis County that are going to work together to finish Highway 169. And what this is doing is building a coalition of partnerships that are going to continue to work on other amazing things. So it's been an absolute privilege to serve this district. And that's why I'm here again running for re-election, to continue the work, to continue building partnerships, lifting up our communities and making the lives of all better for good. So looking forward to the debate tonight, and thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. And what we're going to do, we'll rotate the questions back and forth between Spencer and Aaron. I'm going to start with Spencer first, and this is question number 9. Spencer, what are the top 3 issues facing Minnesota during the next biennium, and how would you deal with each one?
Well, thank you for the question, and there definitely is a lot of issues, but I would say top 3, especially as they pertain to our district and now to the state as a whole. One of the biggest issues I think we're facing right now is energy policy. We need to be focusing on diversifying our energy grid to bring down the cost of power. Over the last 100 years, our country as a whole has been working to lower the cost of energy, because when you lower the cost of energy, you increase the amount of money people have, increase prosperity, lift people out of generational poverty. So this state, we've made some missteps. We need to correct that, and that's some of the bills I've already been working on. So lifting the nuclear energy moratorium, working on biomass policy, those are some of the things. The second thing we need to tackle is just the tax code of the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is now officially one of the highest tax states in the nation. That isn't good for everyone who's starting a business, to our small families, to larger corporate needs. We need to make sure and look out for everybody in the state that they can have money in their pocket to support their local communities and raise families. So we need to be looking at tax cuts. And then the final thing will be balancing the state budget. You know, last biennium, we saw the state budget increase by 40%. A $19 billion surplus got spent and $10 billion was added in taxes. That's not sustainable. If you look at the state government like a business, you can't grow like that and expect your business to keep up with it. So the goal of the biennium next year is going to be to tighten the belt, return money to taxpayers, and get the state back.
Thank you. Aaron, the same question. What are the top 3 issues facing Minnesota during the next biennium, and how would you deal with each?
So thank you for the question. The first issue is climate, and I agree with my opponent about the importance of energy behind that. And I favor transitioning towards green energy sources like wind, solar, iron air policy. And I'm willing to explore lifting the nuclear moratorium as well. But look, we have to switch away from fossil fuels for our energy sources. And the good news is we can use our mining industry right here to support that and process the ore right here and build that economy right up here. And it's actually cheaper because greener energies can more quickly adjust to demands in our power grid throughout the day than fossil fuels. The second one is high cost. When I'm door knocking, I hear a lot about high cost for healthcare, high property tax, homes becoming more expensive, and rent becoming more expensive. So making sure we bring local government relief to so we're not taxing our businesses and our communities and our residents locally. And lastly, education. Our schools have been facing great inequities in education in terms of funding. In greater Minnesota, it's been causing a lot of hardships in our schools, larger class sizes, teacher burnout, and cutting programs that wealthier districts have. And that's just not sustainable to support our economy that our businesses and our residents rely on to bring up the services we need, the professionals we need, like healthcare professionals, and support our industries as well.
Thank you. Spencer, rebuttal?
So yeah, I'll just add to some of those things there. You know, when we talk about energy policy in the grid as a whole, we need to be supporting an all of the above energy approach. So not only does that mean diversifying with solar and wind, which I agree with my opponent, right? We should be building it and mining it here, and that's a lot of the legislation I've been working on. But we also need to make sure we have natural gas, have coal. You know, places like the Boswell Energy Center in Itasca County, we need to have the cleanest coal facility in the country running to keep our mines strong, to keep people working. And when it comes to tax base, you know, people struggling with high taxes on their homes, the way we make that better is by making the state more business friendly with permitting and regulation reform, because that's how we're going to get more business to carry the tax burden. Itasca County, for instance, 44% of the levy is made up in the homestead tax. We need to correct that. And when it comes to education funding, I agree, we need to fully fund education. That's why I was the chief sponsor on a bill that would have been a 5-and-5 formula for the schools. One that was passed came with 58 unfunded mandates. It's time to fund education and give money to local governments and not put it on a bunch of unregulated mandates on them.
Thank you. Aaron, additions or rebuttal?
So in terms of education, it's our representatives' job to support our local communities, and I don't think finger pointing is a good thing to do that. I think if we work across the aisle more, we'll be more successful at getting the services our schools need. I think switching away from fossil fuels is critical. The science is very clear on that. And the good news is we can build that industry right here supporting our mining industry. And we have much of the resources we need that will create good paying union jobs that support our economy and keeps wealth in our economy too, rather than it getting sent elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, this question to you first, and it's the first question on your list. Do you support proposed copper nickel mining projects in northeastern Minnesota? And how would you advocate for or against them?
So yeah, I'm very much in support of all of our mining projects up here in northern Minnesota. I think we can do it environmentally safely. Water is a huge concern, and as long as we can show that it's protected, which I think we can, I think we should move forward on those projects. And it's going to take constant testing and regulation to make sure our well waters and are safe and it doesn't hurt our local businesses, our residents, our tourism economy, and making sure if there is a spill or a leak of pollutant that we hold those responsible accountable to clean it up and repair the damage that is done the best we can. And I think we can do all of that and add to our economy as well to build the green infrastructure we need.
Thank you. And Spencer, the same question. Do you support proposed copper nickel mining projects in northeastern Minnesota? And how would you advocate for or against them?
Well, to start, absolutely, I support copper nickel projects 100%. Actually, it's really exciting. One of those copper nickel projects exists right in our district with the Talon project down in Macon County. That is a really exciting nickel project that we see partnering with companies and research to do this the best way. Also, they have an ability to capture carbon there, which is another issue I've been working on. Some of the things that we can do to advocate on it is, this goes back to what I started in my opening statement, is working on creating partnerships. So something I've been doing as a member of the legislature is trying to get into groups that don't know mining, because there is no better place to mine in the world than on the Iron Range. We have the best workforce, we have the best people, and we do it the best way. So it's trying to get into those rooms with people that don't know what we do and explain it to them. So I've had the ability to travel to some conferences, bring people in from outside of our state, as well as people in our state, and start educating them about how important copper nickel mining is. Because the fact of the matter is, if we don't start domestically mining this copper nickel right here in Minnesota, which is some of the largest deposits in the known world, we're gonna be reliant on places with no environmental regulations, no labor regulations, places like the Congo, or we're gonna continue to be reliant on places for nickel like Russia, where we'll put sanctions on everything else except for nickel because our country needs it. So it's time to start investing right here on the Iron Range. It's time to start investing in the best workforce in the world, and that's right here on the Iron Range. So I've been carrying bills like Make Minnesota a Mining-Friendly State, which would direct policy to the DNR and the MPCA that it is their goal as state agencies to bring these projects to fruition, as well as continue to work on permitting and regulation reform so that we don't see mining projects that have been in permitting stances for over 20 years. That's not sustainable. And those are the things we have to do to get done, to get these projects on the ground, put men and women to work, and make our region strong, our state strong, and Minnesota is gonna be the hub of the economy of tomorrow.
Thank you. Aaron, any rebuttal and additions?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to mine no matter what. I'd rather mine the resources we need to build a green economy rather than having an energy source that requires constant mining like coal or and what have you. Yeah, so, and it's critically important that we support our union jobs, and having mining is extremely important for our economy and protecting those jobs as well.
Thank you. Spencer?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to some of the other stuff I've been working on around copper nickel mining. You know, one of the policies I'm trying to bring forward is this circular economy conversation. And that we have the ability right here in northern Minnesota. I mean, we have the infrastructure, we have the workforce, and we have the background to do this circular economy where we could mine things, manufacture them, ship them to our port in Duluth, send them around the globe, and then actually take those things back here and remanufacture or recycle them and have a circular economy built right here in northern Minnesota. I mean, the opportunity for the people of the Iron Range would be immense. the opportunity for the state of Minnesota would be immense. And it's by working on energy policy so we can bring that price down with a diverse, all of the above energy approach. It's working on housing, and it's also working on building those partnerships and coalitions with people outside of our area so they understand what we do and understand that we do it better than anywhere else in the world to get these projects off the ground and build that world of tomorrow.
Thank you.
Steve, I believe we start with Spencer on this question. And we're gonna go to taxes. Number 30, Minnesota is a high tax state. I think I just read 5th highest state income tax in the nation. What should the legislature do to ensure financial stability while not increasing taxes?
So, well, thank you for the question. This is actually probably the number one issue that I hear about as being a state representative or when I'm out at the doors campaigning. Right now, with inflation and taxes, there was a study done that the average Minnesotan family is needing an extra $11,000 a year just to make ends meet and continue where they were last year. That's no better sign that the people have been overtaxed. And you go back to the budget cycle last year, we had a $19 billion surplus, once again proving that people have been overtaxed. So I think it's on the legislature to make sure that we return this money to the taxpayers. That means tax cuts. That means finding ways to provide for families more. We need to be looking at our tax brackets. We need to realize too that the other way to address this is to attract more business to our state, more economic diversity. Because when we have more job providers, more businesses, they're helping pay into the taxes that lower taxes for everybody else. But unfortunately, Minnesota's become so unfriendly for business. We're seeing these large corporate entities leave our state, and with them, the wealth. I mean, the last 2 years now, Minnesota has a negative wealth migration. That's a huge concern for the future of Minnesota because those are the people that are employing thousands and paying wages. They're leaving and taking that with them to states that are more friendly. States like Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas. So we need to revamp ourselves right now and retain what we have, but also keep attracting what we have. So there's no reason Minnesota should be in the top 5 as highest tax states in the nation, especially when we're showing surplus. It's time to tighten the belt, return money to the taxpayers, and help lift people up. Because when people have more money in their pocket that they're not being taxed that much, that means they put a little bit extra more money in the pan at church, right? That means they start going to the fundraiser for the local football team. And that's how communities take care of themselves. But they can't do that when they're being taxed too much. So those are some of the ideas I have, and we definitely need to overhaul it.
Thank you, Spencer. Aaron, same question for you. Minnesota is a high tax state, it's the 5th highest income tax. What should the legislature do to ensure financial stability while not increasing taxes?
So I agree that it's important to cut taxes. I favor tax cuts that favor the ones who need it the most. When we just cut taxes for the wealthy and large corporations, that reduces the ability to provide funding for our schools or our local government agencies. So what ends up happening is our local communities have to either cut services or raise taxes. And property taxes are one of the most regressive taxes there are that hurt working people and their families the most. So just making sure those people have the money they need to survive and get the things they can afford. Our district has a very, very low median income, and just we can't afford at the local level to provide those services without that that help from the state. And that's short term. I think providing more jobs by encouraging businesses that will support our local businesses, keeping wealth in our communities rather than shipping it going elsewhere for a profit. Because when wealth stays in our local communities, it benefits all of us instead of people living elsewhere.
Thank you. Aaron, Spencer, rebuttal or additional remarks?
Yeah, just to delve into it a little bit more. If we don't revamp permitting regulation reform, we don't make this state business friendly. I mean, programs like Earn Sick and Save Time, paid family medical leave that have that are so broken and the state doesn't even have them set up yet. I mean, they're trying to provide a very good thing, but it's gonna cost extra burden to these businesses, these job providers that are trying to come to Minnesota. They're going to look elsewhere. We need to act now to fix those things. And we need to rein in government, right? I mean, one of the tax increases that was passed last year was adding an inflation formula to the gas tax. That means our gas tax is always going to be increasing. Just like state government now has a formula inside of it that we always factor in inflation, so state government will always be growing. Well, if you have state government always growing, that means you're always gonna need more taxes of the people that inhabit the state of Minnesota. We have to stop this stuff now. We have to reel it back in and tighten our belts when inflation's high and people are struggling to make government more efficient and stop taking that burden away from people so they can invest in themselves, invest in their businesses, and invest in their community.
Yeah, so when the stop sign comes up, you can finish your sentence, but don't have more than three commas in that sentence, okay? Thank you, Spencer. Aaron, you have a minute for rebuttal or additional comment.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, supporting our businesses is extremely important. And I favor giving those incentives to those who provide high-paying jobs, smaller businesses, so they can get their feet off the ground and build our economies from the ground up. So as long as we have tax incentives that provide good jobs and keep the wealth here, I think that's how we're going to build thriving communities and a thriving economy.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Next question is for you, number 33. Many expect next year's Minnesota House of Representatives to be closely divided between Democrats and Republicans. In what ways would your district benefit if your party has a majority in that chamber?
Well, I think we can build off the successes we've already have. I think as a LGBTQ person, there has been a lot of very good, positive legislation, making sure we are protected in the state of Minnesota and that everyone is safe and welcome. I think we can continue to support the education our economy needs to thrive. Now, I don't agree with all the funding that schools went to, but as a teacher, I can speak to what schools need and where that funding should go to the best. And, just the ability to reach across the aisle, making sure we are not finger pointing, but cooperating. I think cooperation instead of competition is how we support our state in the long run and make it better for everyone.
Thank you. Spencer, same question. We anticipate a closely divided legislature. In what ways would your district benefit if your party has a majority in the chamber?
Yeah, so, obviously the last 2 years, we've seen one party in control of every part of Minnesota government. If a Republican House majority is elected, you're gonna see balance return to St. Paul. You're gonna see policy that is actually keeping both sides of the aisle in mind. You're gonna see compromise, you're gonna see partnerships. Because we've seen one of the most partisan legislatures when it was one party in control. We need to return that balance. It was only just a few short months ago that a 1,434-page bill passed in less than 15 minutes off the House floor under one party control without any time to have any discussion or debate on the issue. That's not working together for the people of Minnesota. So by electing a Republican majority in the House, you will see balance returned. You're going to see policy that's going to reduce the amount of taxes that people are paying here. You're going to see permitting regulation reform, not just for solar and wind and battery storage. You're going to see it for everything, from our mines to our mills to our businesses. You're going to see that stuff start to thrive. You're going to see energy policy that's working. You're going to see childcare reform that's actually going to get at the root cause of it, which is making sure we can have regulations and mandates that fit so we can have everything from your large childcare center to a stay-at-home mom or dad that wants to provide that service to their neighborhood. These are the kind of things we have to get to. And the last legislative session, it was one-party control. It was decided by less than 2,000 votes between both chambers. And yet Minnesota was being compared to some of the most progressive states in the nation. My joke about Minnesota politics is 30% of us are Republicans, 30% of us are Democrats, and the other 40% vote for Jesse Ventura. And if we remember that when we're working on policy here in the state of Minnesota, we're gonna have policy that lifts everybody up and not make everyone upset and leave people behind.
Thank you, Spencer. Aaron, you have time for a rebuttal or additional comment?
Yeah, so Democrats care about people and we want to make sure everyone's taken care of. That's why we have free school lunches statewide that removes a lot of the stigma behind those who can't afford school lunches. We respect everyone. I am a huge supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. My opponent voted against that because making sure everyone is welcome and safe in Minnesota and can come here and thrive is what leads to a stronger community.
Spencer, you have time for rebuttal or additional.
Again, it's all about returning balance to Minnesota. Republicans also care about people as well and want everyone to live and support and thrive. But the way we're looking at it is by making sure that people can keep more of their money and not by putting, unfunded mandates and taxes on them, right? And spending out of control. I mean, let's not forget the last 2 years, we saw a $19 billion surplus get blown through and $10 billion in taxes raised. And when the majority party in control even sent back your rebate check that was $1,000 less, it wasn't even done correctly, so you all had to pay taxes on it. These are things that we have to address and we have to fix. And it's time to return that balance to St. Paul where we can have compromise again, and it's not just one party control. Because it's painful to the chamber, it's painful to the people of Minnesota, and they expect better. They want that trust and transparency in government, and my party is going to listen to that, and it's going to listen to the needs of the range. And the Republican Party is also going to make sure and support mining and logging and every industry up here, and not be against it.
Thank you. Steve?
I want to ask a question that you may not have gotten, given that the question was late and we sent the questions out early. But I think it's a very important question for legislators, potential legislators, and also for the listening public to know about. Hibbing Public Access TV and Public Access TV across the district provides community news, government meetings, religious programming, things like this forum, school events, community events, elections, things that are very valuable for the public to know about. These have been funded in the past through cable franchising, TV fees, and related fees to cable providers. Use the public right-of-way to use the right the public has to access these things. This has been the funding for groups like HPAT. Unfortunately, these fees are dwindling as things like MediaCom and other providers are reduced in services. These very services are really endangered. What I'm wondering is, what would you support in the legislature to support? A bill went forward last session. The Equitable Access to Broadband Act was introduced to provide broadband digital equity. Opt-in by cities would do this, wanting to franchise broadband providers. Would you support this legislation? And what other support could you give in the legislature to work to support groups like HPAT and other community TV stations? Spencer, you first.
Well, thank you for the question. This is a huge issue, right? I mean, and let's just boil it down to why it's so important. This is what makes open meetings so important for people, especially spread out across our areas, right? If you live in the northern part of Itasca County, it's sometimes not easy for you to make it to a board meeting in the county seat, or in St. Louis County especially. So having this sort of public access television that can be streamed online or streamed in use of broadband is so important. Some of the ideas that we can make sure, it's all about finding secured funding streams. So there's a bunch of ideas out there. This last bill, I believe it was in conference committee in the Commerce bill at the end, but due to the end of how session all kind of came together, it was one of the things left out. I don't know if I support the policy as it sits right now completely, because I didn't have a good amount of time to work on it. I don't even know if it for sure got a bill hearing, but we need to find that secured funding stream. And I think some of the ideas around that is finding the pots of money that we have coming in every year. So, you know, I think one of the ideas that I had given to me was like the legacy amendment, where we have secured funding coming through every year, and a lot of the programming that public access televisions do is not only just for local governments, it's for the arts, it's for the schools, and that fulfills what legacy is there for. So that'd be a secured funding stream to make sure that we're not having to come back. Because when we talk about taking care of a problem, I want to make sure we take care of it for the long run. And doing Band-Aid fixes where, oh, here's $5 million right now, that's not good. So let's find a secured funding stream that's not raising taxes and moving money around that's already existent in government to fix this problem. So those are some of the ideas I have.
Thank you. Aaron, the same question. Hibbing Public Access TV and public access throughout the district provides community news, live government meetings, religious programming, community and school events, and election programming like this candidate forum. Cable TV franchising and related fees to cable providers have in the past, to use the public right-of-way, have funded access to things like this. This funding is in danger of disappearing. Funding is dwindling right now, endangering the very existence of things like we have here with public access. In the last legislative session, the Equitable Access to Broadband Act was introduced to provide for broadband digital equity as an opt-in by cities wanting to franchise broadband providers. Would you support this legislation, and would you support any other efforts to develop funding for HPAT and other community TV stations?
Sure, I completely agree with my opponent on how important this service is. Without it, only about a dozen people that are here or so would have access to this forum. So I really appreciate the service provided by Hibbing Public Access Television and all the other community television stations across Minnesota. So yeah, I support a number of different possibilities. I believe listening to my constituents on this and doing what's right, whether it's the legacy amendment, trying to get more funding through streaming services and paying for that, but just making sure the cost to other consumers are controlled if we go that route. But ultimately, we need more broadband access up here in northern Minnesota. Where I live, my cell phone service really is terrible. So that's an additional cost to people who live in rural areas as well. So just making sure we have that infrastructure we need to provide this service in the first place.
Thank you, Aaron. Spencer, any additions or rebuttals?
Yeah, I think I'll just add that, you know, this is one of those nonpartisan issues that falls right in the middle for all Minnesotans. That I think the only divide on it is greater versus metro. You know, because when we see these kind of things inside of our metro cities, you know, they have the tax base to support and pay for these programs. But this is something that we struggle with in greater Minnesota. So I think the way to get this done, and something that, you know, I'll work on continuing as your state representative, is building that coalition, not just outside of our area, but across the state, so that we can find the solution so it works right here in Hibbing, just as well as it might work down in Worthington in southwestern Minnesota. So again, building relationships with both sides of the aisle in this in greater Minnesota, coming to the table with those in the metro is going to be the final solution. And again, it's got to be a long-term funding stream and not short-term dollars.
Thank you. Aaron, any additions or rebuttals?
Yeah, so I think this is why local government funding is so important, to make sure our communities can continue to offer these services in the first place, and just making sure the state provides that funding and that those tax dollars come back to us instead of going to tax breaks. So yeah, I agree it's a nonpartisan issue. It needs to get done. We just need to make sure we fight for that funding. And the good news is there has been a lot of work done to build the broadband services up here to provide these services. More can be done, and I would be honored to have that opportunity to do that work.
Thank you very much. This next question is one that also you may not have gotten in advance, but I appreciate anything you can answer with it. Aaron, we'll start with you first. Regional comprehensive housing studies clearly demonstrate a strong need for new housing across the district. What will you do in the legislature to ensure support for these projects to guarantee the district's long-term growth and sustainability?
Yeah, so again, this is making sure local funding is added, making sure we have zoning laws that optimize our housing options and instead of traditional residential versus commercial zoning. So to make sure we have a good affordable housing that meets our needs. I would also favor taking some of the money the state uses from, takes from recreational property taxes and bringing it back to our local communities and schools to help with these new projects as well, because there is a desperate need of housing across Minnesota. And that housing supply drives up costs for everyone else. And it raises rents for those who can't afford it who can afford it the least, and we need relief provided for those families.
Thank you. Spencer?
So thank you for the question. This is a really pressing issue, and it's one that actually I've been doing a lot of work on already. In the last legislative session here this year, there was a housing bill that was put together by members of the majority party and the minority party. It was kind of a bipartisan bill. We were trying to solve this issue. It was one of the things that didn't get done. We didn't find compromise on it, but we're starting to have those conversations, and it was really centered around the fees and the zoning. So to make sure that our builders who are out there building these homes have the flexibility to come into communities and find ways. So there's a lot of work left to be done, because you want to make sure you're not stepping on local government's toes, but you also want to make sure that we have the ability for our business people who are building homes to come in and do what they do best. You know, one of the biggest problems we face in Minnesota is 30% of the cost of a new home is usually wrapped up in fees and regulation. So those are some of the things we have to look at. You know, I mean, we can't be nickel and diming builders, because that cost just gets passed on to the consumer. And when interest rates are rising, you know, a starter or entry-level home isn't $500,000. We need to bring that price down. So I think the way to do it, and this is kind of the dream that I have for our region, is creating partnerships. Again, back to that word I started this conversation with tonight. If we can get local governments to work with local business, to work with state agencies, but also to find builders to attract to this region, I tell you what, right now, if you put a new development anywhere in our district with, you know, half-acre lots, 1 acre lots, whatever it may be, and those houses were $275, you would fill them up and you would sell them like hotcakes. And they would be with people who are under the age of 40, who are bringing their kids back to the Iron Range to put them in the best schools in the state of Minnesota. So, I mean, this is something that could just change the Iron Range as a whole and revitalize our communities. We need to bring housing here, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be going outside of our comfort area and saying, how do we partner with what we have here? What do we bring in? How do we come together to get it done? But these are some of the ideas that I have.
Thank you. Aaron, any additions?
Yeah, just a little bit more about zoning, just having zoning flexibility so that people can walk to the stores they need to, or walk to work more easily, or ride their bikes, and providing more transportation up here as well, to make things more affordable so we're less reliant on our cars as well, or in cost for the people. But yeah, so just making sure that our zoning is community and locally oriented with control to do that, but making sure they have the flexibility to serve our residents and our business.
Thank you. Spencer, any additions?
Yeah, so again, I think this is going to be a combination of building out new housing, but also working with the housing stock we have. So it's about making sure that we can, you know, fix up and make sure the houses that we have here, revitalize them, rebuild them, whatever it may need, but also develop those new neighborhoods. Again, I mean, this is something that I think if we can just prove once, build out a neighborhood up here, a new neighborhood, which we haven't seen in a very long time, and show the people of the range and show the people of the state what a bunch of families moving to our area looks like in new homes that were only $275,000, $300,000. My gosh, you're not going to see new constructions going up in the Lakeville's and the Maple Groves of the world you're gonna see them right here on the range. And they're gonna be going to the brand-new schools that we just got done building with the best teachers, the best sports programs, and the best place to live and raise a family.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Spencer, you're first, I believe. It's hard to keep track of that. Number 36, what specific efforts would you make to better ensure the long-term viability of Hibbing, taconite, and other area taconite mines?
Well, thank you for the question. This is a really important question, right? And as the state representative right now, this is, when you're elected to represent this district, that is like one of your top tenets that you need to follow and keep up with. So one thing, it's working really closely with the city of Hibbing. It's also working closely with the county of St. Louis, and also Itasca County, and then also working the DNR and MPCA about understanding what mineable lands we have around. It's also having relationships with the companies, and finding ways to make sure that we can get to more accessible ore, and we can keep up on the agencies to make sure that the permits are on time to keep the mine moving forward. The range has a lot of taconite left, and we gotta make sure that we can get our companies that are partners with our communities to that ore so they can keep providing the family wage jobs that exist there, while also continuing to build our economies. So it's definitely, and it's not even here, just right here in Hibbing, it's outside of our area too, right? We have to look at all of our mines like this. And I think one of the biggest things that we face that threatens our mines is when we see policy, like there's a couple bills actually that were introduced this last couple of years around something called cumulative air impacts or lowland conifer carbon studies that wanted to take lands and areas out of being able to have mining type industries. This would have directly affected our mines. So now mines that exist in these lands would no longer be able to operate. And we're seeing this attack from, I don't even want to call them environmentalists, because everyone who's a ranger is an environmentalist. No one cares about our water and our wildlife more than us. But we're seeing these kind of policies come and threaten the way that we've been doing things the best way possible for the longest time. So we need to push back against those policies and continue to demonstrate that our mines do it best, while also making sure to give them the tools and resources to continue expanding so that we can keep those family wage jobs and labor here for a very long time.
Thank you, Spencer. Aaron, same question for you. What specific efforts would you make to better ensure the long-term viability of Hibbing taconite and other area mines?
So, I would like to expand our mining operations here as much as we can. We can process our ore right here without shipping it elsewhere. And our ore is a great for building, the ore we have right here is great for building iron air batteries, which are less hazardous than other batteries, and for energy storage, and build our solar panels, our wind turbines right here as well. That's going to provide good union paying jobs. I like to say I'm not only pro-mining, I'm pro-miner, and keeping those jobs and expanding those jobs, supporting our mining industry and building our green economy right here in Minnesota is how we're going to keep us healthy. And as a union person myself, I know how important unions are and how important they are to keeping wealth in our communities and supporting our other businesses and our other sectors of our economy. And I support unions, and my opponent can tout his union endorsements, but when push comes to shove, he has an 8% voting record for the AFL-CIO, so that tells me he does not support miners as much as he could. I will support miners 100%. Thank you.
Aaron, Spencer, you have time for rebuttal or additional comments?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess first thing I want to just mention partnerships again, because this is going to be a partnerships not only between all of our mining companies up here, with our state agencies, and also the men and women of labor, so we can make sure that these mines have the land to operate. That is the problem right now with HIBTAC, and that is a problem that I'm working actively on in conjunction with our Senator Rob Farnsworth. So, I mean, it is a really important issue. I just have to address I've always supported the men and women of labor. That's why I've earned most of their endorsements across our area, and I have a voting record to prove for it. So I wish we wouldn't stoop to that level, but, I am proudly voted pro-labor, always, and have great relationships with the men and women of labor inside our district.
Aaron, you have time for, 1 minute for rebuttal or additional comments.
Well, yeah, the voting record suggests otherwise, but, yeah, just making sure our communities our minds are supporting our local communities, and we have local control of our minds as well, and making sure we have a voice and how they're operated and where that money goes, and making sure it isn't supporting that wealth isn't going elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, next question is for you to start, number 35. What is your evaluation of the state of Minnesota's efforts to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion in state agencies and institutions? What legislation would you support to correct or improve these efforts?
So, yeah, I think these efforts are extremely important in helping marginalized communities. Unfortunately, there is a lot of stigma behind those, a lot of misinformation that is very harmful to communities who need support the most, who face inequities the most. So just making sure we clear up that misinformation as much as we can from the state level, and making sure we communicate better why it's important for everyone, why it benefits everyone. Because when one sector of our community isn't thriving, they're not helping us support our economy either. So just making sure that these services are made, and possibly rebranding it to get rid of that stigma as well, because unfortunately it's pretty bad.
Thank you, Aaron. Spencer, what is your evaluation of Minnesota's efforts to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion in state agencies and institutions? What legislation would you support to correct or improve these efforts?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think the way I look at this is, and I've actually had a lot of conversations with people about this, one of the most diverse and inclusive places to ever exist in the Midwest is right here on the Iron Range. 44 different ethnicities all came here and started digging holes in the ground and working together and building the area that we love so much. So no one knows more about that than the people of our district and the people of the range. I think as we look at it as a state level, I think when we look at the policy around it, I have nothing against diversity and inclusion, but I think I want to make sure that we're hiring qualified people. And I think when you start putting too many policies in effect that put people back into pots, you actually start separating them again. If we really want to have a diverse and inclusive society, it's by looking at everyone the same and realizing that we're all the same person. We're all the same member of this community, regardless of everything else that, makes us special and unique. But when you create policy to, have check marks based on who someone is to give them a higher ranking than the other person, you're actually pitting people against each other again. And I think it's our job as communities, our job as legislators to make sure that everyone has what our Constitution has inside of it, life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness, and not be dividing us based on policy. So that's the way I approach it, is that we should just get back to making sure it's supporting everybody and not looking at policy that's going to divide us.
Aaron, time for rebuttal or additional comments?
So I'm a proud board member of Itasca Pride, and just the attacks we've faced with misinformation, hate that we got, those have real harmful effects, and that's where the equity and inclusion is needed. It's not to put us on a pedestal or give us jobs we're not qualified for, because we're facing a lot of harm as well, and that's harming our ability to participate in our economy, and that goes for any marginalized community. So we need to make sure everyone is safe and welcome, regardless of race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, what have you, and making sure those communities have a voice as well. And that is one of the main reasons I am running.
Spencer, rebuttal or additional comments?
Hey, just to get back to the question was around our state agencies and who they're hiring. And I just think it's really important that our state agencies who are hiring people to work for them, they work for the people of Minnesota. And I just want to make sure that we are hiring people based on their qualifications, and we're not going to start pitting people and groups of people against each other by having check boxes for those kind of things. If we really want communities that work together and thrive together and respect each other, is by creating partnerships and lifting up and building relationships, not separating them by putting boxes by their names and making mandates.
Thank you. Steve?
I'm gonna give you one softball question. We did last time, I figure I have to do it this time. Aaron, what is one aspect of your opponent you most admire?
Well, I think he is a very eloquent speaker and very passionate about what he believes. And, you know, I'm just sitting here on, as his opponent. It's very, very much a challenge to make sure I'm on my game and provide responses as well, because he is very good at it, so.
Thank you. Spencer, same question. What one aspect of your opponent do you most admire?
You know, definitely, Aaron, I definitely admire your commitment, right? I mean, and I think we can say this to each other as candidates for office. It's not an easy task. And I just really appreciate how hard you've gotten into this race, and you've worked and you've put yourself out there and spread your campaign message, because it's really important for the future of our democracy in our region that we have people step up like you have and that I'm doing too. So I really admire and respect your commitment to run for office. So thank you for doing so.
Well, gentlemen, it's time for the closings. So Aaron, I think Spencer took off. You get the first closing.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate my commitment to making sure we build communities, making sure everyone feels represented here in the state of Minnesota. I really don't feel like I have the representation I deserve right now. So we need more school funding. Our schools are suffering, facing huge teacher cuts, and that's not equitable. We need more local government funding so our residents can get the services they need, and we need to build the wealth in our communities and keep our wealth here so our local services aren't overburdened as well, while at the same time facing funding shortages. So just making sure our tax codes are fair, that help working families the most, and those who need our government services the most.
Thank you. Spencer, closing?
Well, I just want to thank the Hibbing Chamber for putting on this forum this evening, and also to Hibbing Public Access for being a part of this tonight, making sure multiple people are going to be able to see this. It's been an absolute privilege and honor to serve as the state representative here for House District 7A the last 2 years. And I'm humbly asking for your vote to continue the work that I've been doing. You know, it's been a privilege to earn the endorsements I have this time around from places like the Minnesota Chamber, the NFIB, but also from the men and women of labor and the 49ers, the Teamsters, the pipe trades, the carpenters, but also in other groups like the NRA and the MPPOA and the Firefighters Association. So the reason I mention all these endorsements is because what we're doing together, and I say together because as your representative, it's not just about me, it's about our district. We're building relationships with groups that sometimes have opposed each other, and they're coming together through us, and we're finding ways to get things done. We're delivering legislation that's making the lives of all better for good right here in House District 7A. We're fixing things. We're advocating for change, but we're doing it in a way that's building relationships down there in St. Paul. You know, and I'm asking for your vote too, to also return that balance to St. Paul. I think there's many people out there that are watching this or will watch this that are frustrated seeing that the state of Minnesota is going down a path that doesn't resemble what they believe in anymore. And that's something that I've really been hearing, working in and around the district, when people texting and calling me on my cell phone. We need to return that balance to St. Paul. And as your state representative, I'm committed to doing that. I'm committed to continue to work on build those relationships, to be a leader inside my caucus and a leader for this state so that we can lift everyone up. We can give people a hand up rather than a handout. So I'm just asking for your vote again, to continue to be your voice down there in St. Paul, to be your representative. But we're gonna do this together in partnership, and that's something I'm gonna continue to work on, is continue to work with our communities. And again, let's just all come together. Please vote for me on November 5th, and together we'll make the lives of all better for good.
I'd like to thank both candidates tonight for appearing with us in our forum. We really appreciate this. Historically, District 7 has one of the best voter turnouts of any district in the United States, so I hope everybody watching this, here and at home, goes out to vote and make a wise choice at the polls. Thank you very much.
Thank you.